I know that we've already recognized people who volunteered at Hope City, and they've sacrificed and given. And before I move on, I just want to say just how proud of you guys I am. October 16th, we didn't have a building. We didn't have a place to meet. And I came and stood in front of about 200 people and said, hey, we have this facility and we need to raise $50,000 in the next 6 days. And a group of people stepped up and donated that allowed us to move into this facility and sign a lease that's almost double of what we were paying at the Ritz-Charles. And we moved in on November 4th. We moved our stuff in on November 4th. We set it up as if we were at the Ritz-Charles, and we had no chairs. And so y'all brought your chairs to church. And then people gave, as we went through the end of the year, we had significant year-end giving that allowed us to make some of the renovations that you see. But it was really you guys stepping up and being generous. And what we kept saying is, how can we be great stewards of the resources that we've been entrusted to? So all the donations and all the volunteer time has been incredible. And I'm just honored to be one of your pastors. I don't take it for granted. Before we move on, I can't move on without recognizing one person that stepped up in an unbelievable way. She was here till at least 11 o'clock p.m. each of the last, I would say 8 of the last 10 days, working, painting. She painted for 62 hours last week. And so I'm going to ask my wife, Trish, to come in here. Up here. She's not even in here. Can somebody go grab her? I got flowers for her. She ain't even here to get them. But she has been incredible. Come on in, Brandon. So Brandon has the flowers for Trish. No, he didn't buy them. I bought them, but I mean, he's bringing them to me. So when she gets in here, but she did not want to be recognized. She did not want to be singled out. But she project managed, she managed the budget. She asked how much she could spend on furniture, and she came in under that. And so all the furniture that we got was from IKEA, which those of you know that that means that Howell had to be put together. Come up here. I've got flowers for you. You're not even in here. As a married couple, we obviously don't communicate well. You can see that. Otherwise, she'd be in the service. So.
I had a toddler come out and say, I have to pee. And I'm like, let's go to the bathroom. So.
Anyway, I just want to say thank you for all that you did.
I love you.
Well, we got to get into the message because there is a second service. But I love this time of year. I love what a new year brings. I love the prospect of hope and new beginnings and a clean slate. I love the energy that comes from a new year and setting goals. And we have this belief, don't we, that this year is going to be better. This year is going to be different. This year is going to be the year that I take a step forward in my career. This year is going to be the year that I find that dating relationship. This is going to be the year that I get that promotion. This is going to be the year that our marriage gets better. This is going to be the year that we get healthy financially. Like there's this energy in January where we actually have hope. We have this optimism that this year can be different. And last month, every year, for the last probably I would say about 8 or 9 years, our family has gotten together the week between Christmas and New Year's, and we've set goals for the year. We don't do resolutions. It's just basically it's semantics. But we set goals, all right? Because we feel like goals are more attainable than resolutions. We'll hold on to goals longer. We'll be more successful with goals. And so we've walked through this process with our boys, and quite honestly, if I'm just being straight with you, like this year was so hectic. We had adopted 2 kids in June, and so we have 5 kids now instead of 3, and Christmas break was just a time basically where we just passed out and just slept for 7 days, and so we didn't come together like we typically do, but we set goals individually, and one of the goals that I set each of the last 5 years is lose 40 pounds. And so every year it's just like a reoccurring goal. And lose 40 pounds. As you can tell, I have not achieved that goal. Otherwise, I'd be down 200 pounds over the last 5 years, okay? And so I've not achieved it, but I'm getting there. And so I was doing so well. You guys. Like, I was doing good. I was eating salad, no carbs, salad. And then I'm on my way over to the church on Wednesday of this week, and I'm thinking in my mind, where can I stop and get a salad? Trisha calls me, hey, I'm at Portillo's. Do you want something? I'm like, yep, I do. I want something. So large beef sandwich, please, and some fries. No cake shake, though. I refrained, okay? No chocolate cake shake. But one of the other goals that I set this year was I was going to read through the Bible this year in a year. And I've done that several different occasions over the course of the 20 years that I've been a pastor, but I broke out this year. I didn't want to do it on an app. I didn't want to do it on some electronic reading plan. I broke out my old school one-year Bible. And I thought, I want to sit down with my journal. I want to sit down and I want to underline the passages. And those of you that aren't familiar with the one-year Bible, basically gives you a passage in the Old Testament that you can read in a day, a passage in the New Testament, and then a psalm and a proverb. Takes 15 to 20 minutes for me. I'm a slow reader. And I didn't want to just do it to accomplish it. I wanted to actually absorb some of the things that I was actually reading. And so you guys, I launched into this goal incredibly well. All right. I was just crushing it. And then 8 days in, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm 2 days behind 8 days in. And I just felt so defeated. Not as defeated as I feel right now, because I was doing the math today. On day 21, I'm 8 days behind, all right? And so now you might be thinking, you're a pastor, you haven't read the Bible for 8 of the last 21 days? I've read the Bible. I am talking about accomplishing all of the reading in the one-year Bible. I haven't done it. I haven't accomplished it. And I just I'm a failure. I'm a failure as a pastor. I'm a failure as a Christian, all right? I shouldn't even be allowed to be a Christian. I can't even keep my word to the Lord about reading his word, you know what I'm saying? And so I just have felt this, man, I had these great goals, these great aspirations, and then Portillo's came in the equation. Then I had these great goals, these great aspirations, and I've skipped, once every other day of reading my, God's word. Who am I? What is going on? And I think as I reflect, this idea, this prospect of a new year, the one question I ask myself going into a new year is the question I want to ask you this morning. It's this question: do you like who you're becoming? As you start 2018, do you like who you are becoming? Do you like who you're becoming as a person? Do you like who you're becoming as a man, as a woman? Do you like who you're becoming as a parent? Do you like who you're becoming as a spouse, as a wife, as a husband, as a friend? Do you like who you're becoming as an employee? Are you making steps toward who you want to be? Or are you just coasting? Are you just allowing life to live you rather than you live your life? Do you like who you're becoming? And here's the deal. We all want to be better spouses. We all want to be better employees. We want to all be better friends. We all want to have healthier dating relationships. We want to be more generous. We want to be more loving. We want to be more patient. But there's one thing I believe that stands in the way from who you are and who you want to become, and that's your past. Who you used to be is the biggest obstacle to who you want to be. And here's why it's so tough, is because our past is the most predictable indicator of our future. As I look at my life, it goes in cycles. It's just cyclical. It's never anything new. And if you're honest with yourself, I think you'll resonate with this. I don't struggle with new sins. I struggle with the same old sins that I've struggled with since I was a teenager, over and over and over again. I don't have new arguments with my wife. I have the same argument over and over and over again. I don't give my kids new lectures with brand new content, right? I tell them the same thing over and over and over again. Our past is the greatest indicator and predictor of our future. And we all have these plans and dreams and hopes for the future, but many of us this morning, if we're really honest, our past is keeping us from all that God created us to be. And our past really isn't our past if it affects our present. If you think that your past is really in the past, but it's actually affecting who you are right now, it's affecting your marriage, it's affecting your relationship with your kids, it's affecting you as an employee, it's not really your past. I got a call, I'm not making this up, I got a call yesterday from a friend of mine in Nashville where we used to live. I have not talked to him in almost 4 years. He called me, the last time I talked to him, he had this incredible marriage crisis, this tragic marriage crisis, and he needed to meet with me immediately. His wife was having an affair, he busted her, and he wanted me to fix them. And so I started meeting with him. He's a good friend of mine. I cared deeply about them. I wanted to see their marriage succeed. They had 2 kids. Huge potential for the kingdom of God. And so I spent time with him. And he's just lighting into her. She did this, she did that. She was not broken. She did not want to be with him. By God's grace, over the course of time, we met a couple different times and we moved. By God's grace, they restored their marriage. They're married today. About a year after all of this took place, it came out that he was having an affair during the time she was having an affair. And he called me yesterday because he has felt so guilty for the last 4 years that I spent all of this time pouring into their marriage. And all the time he was sitting there lying to me. and lying to her. He's like, I just don't feel like I can move forward until I have a conversation with you. See, our past isn't really our past if it's impacting our present. You ever wondered why you have a hard time finding and maintaining healthy relationships? Ever wonder why, no matter how hard you try, you still lose your temper on the people that matter most to you? Ever wonder, no matter how much you say you're going to be a person of truth, you always end up shading the truth? Wonder why you make the same mistakes over and over and over again? Are you not trying hard enough? Do you not have a great strategic plan for improving yourself? Maybe that's the case. But what I found in my life is that not dealing with my past sets me up to repeat it. That when I don't deal with the things in my past, I am really just doomed to repeat it. And so if we want 2018 to be any different than 2017 or 2016 or 2015, we have to rise up over our past and we have to stop allowing it to impact our present. So I want to look at this story in Exodus chapter 2, and we're going to make application from the story. Now, this is a story of Moses, and Moses grew up in the house of Pharaoh. His mom gave him up because he was going to be killed. All the infants in Egypt were going to be killed at that time, and so his mom gave him up, put him in a basket, floated him down the river. The daughter of Pharaoh finds him, takes him in, and he grows up in the house of Pharaoh. Now he's an adult, and we pick up the story basically where it says many years later, okay? So we don't know how old Moses is at this time, but many years later, when Moses had grown up, he went on to visit his own people, the Hebrews. So he's Jewish, but he has grown up Egyptian, okay? So that's the context of the story. And he saw how hard they were forced to work. They were slaves in Egypt at that time. During his visit, he saw an Egyptian beating his fellow Hebrew. After looking in all directions to make sure no one was watching, Moses killed the Egyptian and hid the body in the sand. The next day, when Moses went out to visit his people again, he saw two Hebrew men fighting. "Why are you beating up your friend?" Moses said to the one who had started the fight. The man replied, "Who appointed you to be our prince and judge? Are you going to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday?" Then Moses was afraid, thinking, "Everyone knows what I did." And sure enough, Pharaoh heard what had happened, and he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in the land of Midian. We're going to skip down, or we're going to verse 15. When Moses arrived at Midian, he sat down beside a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters who came as usual to draw and fill the water troughs for their father's flocks. When the girls returned to Reuel, their father, he asked, "Why are you back so soon today?" "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds," they answered, "and when they drew the water for us, he watered our flocks." Where is he?" their father asked. "Why did you leave him there? Invite him to come and eat with us." Moses accepted the invitation and settled there with them. In time, Reuel gave Moses his daughter Zipporah to be his wife. Now, I want to look at the story of Moses and the mistake that he made and see kind of in his heart how we deal with failure. So 3 ways that we deal with our past, 3 ways that we deal with our regrets. The first is we bury it. Look at verse 12. After looking in all directions to make sure no one was watching, Moses killed the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. Some of our deepest regrets in life occur in the most private moments, when we don't think anybody's watching. You want to set yourself up for regret? You want to set yourself up for mistakes? Look to the right, look to the left to make sure nobody's watching. When you feel like you're being tempted and you think to yourself, if I do this, nobody will find out, you're setting yourself up for regret. Moses looks in both directions to make sure nobody's watching. Now I want you to think about all that he leverages in this moment. He's grown up as royalty. He's grown up in the house of Pharaoh. He's had every blessing. The most powerful man in Egypt, he's lived in his home. He's led his army. He has been a part of Pharaoh's family. And he leverages all of that. He cashes all of that in to kill this Egyptian. He looks in all directions and he decides to kill him. And then what does he do? He buries the body in the sand. Now, some of you here today are trying to deal with the regrets in your life by just burying it. If you ignore it long enough, you think it's going to go away. If you can just bury it deep enough, then maybe it won't affect you. So you buried the abuse that you experienced as a kid. You buried the abandonment you felt when your dad left. You buried the heartache you experienced when your divorce happened. You buried the sadness that you felt when your mom passed away. You buried the rejection of being fired. And you thought you could avoid the pain of that regret, the pain of that experience by just ignoring it altogether. But it doesn't work that way, does it? My guess is if you struggle in a relationship, it has little to do with that relationship and more to do with your past. I can tell when I haven't resolved things from my past because I treat my kids in a way, I treat my wife in a way that I swore I would never treat them. You ever been there? When you grow up, you're like, man, I'm never going to talk to my wife that way. I'm never going to treat my kids that way. I'm never going to give my kids that lecture. Right? And I look back and I see the things that I have not dealt with in my past, and I see how they make their way into the most important and the most vital relationships I have in my present. And if you want to overcome, you want to rise up against your past, you got to stop burying it. Secondly, we run from it. Look at verse 15. And sure enough, Pharaoh heard what had happened, and he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in the land of Midian. Maybe for some of us, we bury it and we ignore it. For some of us, we just run in the opposite direction from it. One relationship fails, we run on to the next one. One friendship dissolves, we just run to the next one. One job isn't what we thought it was going to be, we just run to the next job. One marriage isn't what we think we deserve, so we just run to the next one. I came to the realization about 10 years ago in my life through a number of different circumstances that I'll share with you in just a second. My life hit rock bottom, and I had to face the reality of some of the choices that I made. And I came to this realization that this is how I deal with regret. This is how I deal with mistakes. I just run to the next thing. And so I didn't really have any deep friendships, long-standing friendships. I have a couple of friends that go to Hope City I'm friends with. I'm so jealous. They have friends from like middle school that they still hang out with, right? I don't even remember the names of people in my middle school, all right? Like, I'm not that person. You know what? I recycled friendships about every 3 years. You know why? Because we never lived anywhere longer than 3 years, because I would get mad at my boss for the same thing I got mad at my boss at the previous church I worked at, and we would move to a different city because I felt like I deserved more. And so there was this pattern in my life where I didn't take time to resolve issues in my life. I just went on to the next place so I could live out the honeymoon there until people found out about the real me, or I had to deal with real issues or have to develop real friendships or real relationships, and then that was too much for me, so I just went on to the next thing. And you are not going to resolve your past. You're not going to overcome regret. You're not going to allow God to redeem the past that you're trying to run from. It just is not going to happen. You know, two things happen when you try to outrun your past. First, you end up exhausted. You're tired. Nothing in your life is ever resolved. You're a victim and everyone else is wrong. And secondly, it catches up to you. No matter how hard you run, it catches up to you. And you know how you can tell when your past is catching up to you? When you start repeating it. When you start doing things in your life that you said you were not going to do again. Finally, we settle for it. We settle for it. Moses leaves Egypt and he runs to this land of Midian, and he places himself in voluntary exile. He's cut off from everything he's ever known. Verse 21, Moses accepted the invitation and he settled there with him. Some of us bury our past, and some of us run from our past, and some of us just get used to it. We just settle for it. We get comfortable with the dysfunction. The pain and the anger that we have felt from our childhood, it actually becomes a part of our identity. We wouldn't know what we would do if we forgave our dad. We wouldn't know how we would function if we forgave our ex-spouse. We wouldn't know what to do because that dysfunction has become a part of our identity. We learn to live with insecurity. We get used to struggling with addiction. We become pros at hiding our sin. We settle for life with regret. Moses spent 40 years as a sheep herder in Midian. He felt like God could never use him again. He could never go back to the life that he had. Despite his people, the Israelites, spending those 40 years in slavery to the Egyptians, he never thought he was going to be anything else than a shepherd. He learned to live with regret, and he settled in Midian. So how do we, that's really encouraging, Justin. Thanks for the pep talk. We'll see you, all right? So how do we move forward from here? How do we rise up from our past? I just want to share just a few principles with you as we close. The first is your willingness to deal with your past will determine your healing from your past. See, so often we repeat sins and repeat behavior patterns in our life because we fail to understand, or we don't really want to understand, the brokenness in our life. For many of us, we spend so much time and so much energy pretending that we're not broken. I saw a quote on Instagram that said, "The broken places are how the light breaks through." right? But we don't experience the light because we have this veneer on the outside of our life that pretends like we're not broken, we're okay, we're all put together. And we're so tired from pretending we don't have the capacity to actually admit that we're messed up and that we're hurting. And we fail to grasp how our past decisions and our past sins and our past mistakes, if not understood, if not acknowledged, if not confessed, don't have the potential to be redeemed. Right? God can't redeem the things in our life that we don't acknowledge. God can't make beautiful the things in our life that are broken unless we offer them to him. One of the things I say all the time is God can only heal the parts of our heart that we give to him. Just like he doesn't force himself into our salvation, he's not going to force himself into our healing. You have to offer that part of your heart to God. And many of you guys, you know our story. For those of you that don't, I was a pastor here in Indianapolis. We started a church 15 years ago. 12 years ago, I had an affair and lost my ministry, almost lost my marriage. And I had this belief in the restoration process that I could just fix that decision. Like I went into counseling saying, okay, give me the steps I need to take to make this up to my wife. And one of the first things the counselor said is, you're never going to make this up to her. Like no amount of performance will ever make this okay. He said, the best gift you can give your wife is understanding how you got here. And so I went on about a 3-year journey of understanding the sexual abuse that I experienced when I was a kid that I never told anyone about, understanding the pornography addiction that I had that I never told anyone about that I denied, understanding the abandonment issues I had because I found out I was adopted. So there was all of this stuff, and everybody looks at the shrapnel and the bomb of that decision, but it was the underlying things that brought me to that place. And I could have tried to fix it, but what I would have probably done is repeated it. And there are certain things in your life that if you're trying to outrun your past, if you're trying to hide your past, if you're trying to bury your past, and you don't stop to just say, okay, God, I'm so jacked up right now. Here is this part of my heart. You're never going to fix that problem. You're always going to struggle and you're always going to be tired. Overcoming your past starts with acknowledging it. Secondly, your past isn't a life sentence. It was a season of your life. Here's what's incredible. The 40 years that Moses was in the desert of Midian, God didn't stop working. The Bible says later on in this passage that God continued to hear the cries of the people of Israel. And you know who he had in mind for that assignment? Moses. I believe that the whole reason Moses was saved as a child was for this moment. Now, Moses delayed God's plan by choosing his own path, but he couldn't deny God's plan for him. His mistakes could delay God's plan. Your mistakes can delay God's plan for your life. But if you come back to God, it will never deny God's plan for your life. God will step into that and he will redeem it. And that's what he does with Moses. God is going to leverage everything about Moses' past, his upbringing, his relationships, his relationship with Pharaoh, his heart for the Israelite people, even his mistakes to rescue the people of Israel. And the past mistakes that you have made in your life, that might have been a season of your life. It's not a life sentence for your life. Right? God longs to use you. God has a plan for your life. God longs to leverage everything that you've been through and every mistake that you've made, not for just your benefit, but for his glory. That's who God is. That's what God does. God specializes in taking broken things and bringing redemption to them. Next, the cross of Christ is the only safe place for your regrets. The cross of Christ is the only safe place for your regrets. You know, researchers have found that the most common human emotion, the most powerful human emotion is love, which it's not that surprising, right? I mean, I love pizza and I love my wife. Like I love everything, right? I love just kind of oozes out of us. We say we love everything, so that's not surprising. You know what the second most common and most powerful human emotion is? Regret. Regret. I wish I would have gone to counseling instead of filing for divorce. I wish I would have spent more time with my kids when they were growing up. I wish I would have offered forgiveness to my dad before he passed away. I wish is the mantra of regret. See, all pain stings in our life, but regret is different. Disappointment says, man, I wish that didn't take place. Right? I'm disappointed in the Colts season. Right? I'm disappointed that, they only won 3 or 4 games. I'm disappointed in that. I don't regret it. I wasn't on the field. Regret is different than disappointment. Regret says things would have turned out differently had I done something differently. My relationship with my kids would be different if I was a different parent. My relationship with my spouse would be different if I was a different parent, if I was a different wife or husband. And those regrets have the capacity to sideline us. So what do you do with regret? Psalm 103:12 says, as far as east is from the west, that's how far God has removed your mistakes from you. Like there's this picture in the Bible that you were never designed to carry regret. You were never designed to carry shame. That's what Christ died for. Christ died for your mistakes. He died for your regrets. He died to overcome the shame that you feel on those past mistakes. So you carrying them is denying the power that God wants to give you to overcome them. Because the cross of Christ conquered them. That's the good news of the gospel. And maybe you're so tired today because you've been carrying the regret that Jesus came to take from you. See, the Bible says that those who are in Christ are new creations. The old has gone, the new has come. And finally, as we close, with God, who you were yesterday doesn't get to define who you become tomorrow. Look at verse 19 of Exodus chapter 4. Moses has gone to his father-in-law and said, hey, I need to go back to Egypt to rescue these people. He's given into God's plan. Before Moses left Midian, the Lord said to him, return to Egypt, for all those who wanted to kill you have died. Now, I want to stop there for just a second because this is something some of you need to hear. There are going to be people in your life as you try to overcome regret, as you try to process your mistakes, as you try to become the new person that God has created you to be, there's going to be people that will not allow you to let go of the past. More importantly, they will keep hold of the past as you're trying to let it go. The more you try to let go of the past, they're going to remind you of who you used to be. So God had to wait till every single person that knew Moses was a murderer was dead before he allowed him to go back. And there might be people in your life, there might be relationships in your life that you're going to have to allow to just hold on to their dysfunction and not keep you in the regret and the mistakes of your past. Because haters are going to hate. That's what this basically says. Haters are going to hate. And the more you try to be the person God calls you to be, there are going to be one camp of people that are going to encourage you, and there are going to be one camp of people that are going to resent you. And they're going to remind you of everything you used to be, not who God has created you to be. And so you're just going to have to say, you know what? I'm not going to find my identity. I'm not going to find my value in who you say I am because you know what? God has overcome my regret. God has overcome my past, and it's time for me to rise up against it. So let's go on. Verse 20. So Moses took his wife and his sons on a donkey, and they headed back to the land of Egypt. And this last passage, this last sentence here is really powerful. I don't think we get it. In his hand, he carried the staff of God. See, Moses did murder someone, and he was a fugitive for 40 years. And he spent 40 years basically just chilling in his dysfunction. But he carried the staff of God. He carried the presence of God. God gave him his very presence. And he said, in this staff is the power of the miraculous, Moses, and I'm entrusting you with it. Moses killed a guy. He also parted the Red Sea. He also brought us the 10 Commandments. He also rescued 2 million people out of slavery. He also set up the nation of Israel to experience the promised land. He also gave us a foundation for the faith that we experience today. Moses made a lot of mistakes, but he carried the presence of God. And that's how you rise up against mistakes. That's how you rise up against your past. That's how you overcome regret, is you leave here and you carry the presence of God. You carry it into your workplace tomorrow. You carry it into your marriage today. You carry it into your dating life. And no one gets to define who you are. God has already done that. 2018 is the year that you and I rise up. Let's pray together. God, we thank you so much just for your ability to redeem the things that we break. And God, would you just remind us that we aren't who we want to be, but we're not who we used to be. And that you are doing a work in us. For the man or woman here today that they carry a pile of regrets into this place, would you just remind them that it's not through their power, their strength, it's not through anything that they do, it's through all that what you have accomplished on the cross that we can leave our regrets at the foot of the cross. So God, would you give us the strength and the courage and the patience to rise up against our past. In Jesus' name, amen.